We all aspire to perfect days on the river, and these can take many forms. A few hours absorbed in the pursuit of a fish and the rhythms of nature is an enriching experience. The chance to get away from it all is invaluable in the modern world, and there's certainly more to fishing than simply catching fish. However, fish do obviously form an important part of the picture, whether we catch them or not. A lot of river fly fishing clubs in the UK routinely stock trout for their members to catch, and in some cases this is to make up for a lack of natural populations. Stocking may also be designed to allow anglers to take fish for the table, without depleting wild stocks. But for many clubs it can be as simple as continuing what has always been done. On the face of it, the idea that the more fish you stock, the more fish you catch would seem to be a perfectly reasonable expectation. So it couldn't ever be true that buying more stock fish ends up actually reducing rod catches, could it? Remarkably, a number of fly fishing clubs have actually found catch returns increasing in response to a much reduced stocking regime. Many clubs would be amazed at the wild fishing potential within their waters, even after decades of stocking has been taking place. To understand more, let's look at the main things that control how many fish a river can support. First of all, the simple availability of physical habitat that trout prefer is the most fundamental factor. When thinking about stockfish, this will relate to adult trout habitat and the features that adult trout require. Once the available habitat features are occupied, any additional fish are in a perilous position. If there are no more places to live, trout will either die or disappear downstream. What constitutes a place to live is not simply a volume of water, it's the physical structure in and around that water. Secondly, the amount of catch and kill fishing pressure and other forms of predation directly controls the numbers of fish. Thirdly, there are interactions and indirect effects such as the increased effort required by resident fish to defend holding lies against introduced fish, or even the attraction of more predators to an area after heavy stocking, causing more wild and stock fish to be eaten. We've seen in another of our videos how fertile stockfish can also damage wild fish populations. When we add that to the potential competitive interactions between stock and resident fish, how can clubs get the best out of their fisheries? The best starting point is to look at what your club's current policy is and what it aims to achieve. Of course, the use of sterile stockfish takes care of the genetic damage part of the equation, but still leaves the competitive interactions issue unsolved. If catch and release can be coupled with any required habitat works, then the need for stocking could be much reduced, or even removed entirely. But there's no point adding more adult fish to the river than the habitat can support. Think of it like this: as much as you might enjoy beer, you can only ever fit 1 pint of beer into a pint glass. Just like adding more fish when your river is already at capacity, pouring more beer into an already full pint glass is really wasteful and slightly painful to watch. We would only dream of topping someone's drink up when it's had some taken out. And it's exactly the same with fish in your river. If anglers are taking fish for the table, it's better to replace lost stocks as the season progresses rather than try to overfill the river with fish at the start of the season. Let's take the analogy one step further. What if there's simply not enough pint glasses to go round? Say that there are 3 glasses for a 4-person round. No matter how hard you try, you can't fit 4 pints into 3 pint glasses. Your only option is to get more glasses, and this again is exactly the same when it comes to your river. Even when we're talking about stockfish, it's only when you can tackle a genuine lack of adult fish holding habitat that you can hope to accommodate extra trout. So when you're adding extra structure to your rivers, think of it as adding additional pint glasses so that your club members can enjoy a bigger round. You wouldn't drink an off pint or a corked bottle of wine, and it should be just the same with your trout supply. Be prepared to send back stockfish that are in poor condition or that are not to your specifications. You should be able to inspect your fish prior to delivery, and you're also entitled to look at health check paperwork relating to each batch. Suppliers of good stockfish can be found, and their job is highly skilled, so beware of bargain basement prices and establish a good relationship with your supplier. Deciding on the right stocking density means assessing the habitat and making that habitat ideal for fish. The WTT can help with both, of course. You should also aim to make stockfish a similar size to the adult wild fish in your river, because your stream is the best guide to how big a fish belongs in it. After that, there are some simple guidelines to follow that will help minimise some of the unintended negative consequences of stocking. First of all, Even brilliant habitat will not tend to support an approximate overall density of adult fish greater than around 1 adult fish per 50 square metres, so you shouldn't aim to add numbers of fish much over that density. There is, after all, a limit to the full pint glasses that you can fit in your table. If you ignore this and go a long way over the top, it's simply beer all over the floor. You're effectively throwing handfuls of banknotes off the bridge into the river and watching them sail out to sea. It's really not acceptable to knowingly add far more fish than you know your river can support. Apart from the great waste, it carries a higher risk of attracting excessive numbers of mobile predators like fish-eating birds, so it really pays to identify an appropriate stocking density. Your supplier can provide sterile stockfish known as triploids to avoid genetic impacts, and they can also supply fish that are marked either with a tiny visual tag or with a clipped fin, so that stockfish can be correctly distinguished from any of your wild trout. Of course, all wild trout should be returned to the water and only stockfish kept for the table. Reducing the total number of stockfish can help to pay for the slightly increased cost of marking fish. A good way to reduce big peaks in competition between fish, bird predation and wasteful deaths of stockfish is to not stock in one massive pre-season glut. Stockfish are not as good at holding station in spates as wild fish, and if you can respond to the weather forecast and river levels when deciding your stocking date, it really helps to avoid waste. In fact, going back to the beer once more, from a fishing point of view, it's better to top up regularly after small gulps than it is to pour all of the drinks at the beginning of the night. Smaller top-ups are much less vulnerable to disaster in both cases. At the end of the season, as many stockfish as possible should be removed from the river by compulsory catch and kill of marked fish to minimise competitive effects over the lean times of winter. Keeping good catch returns, recording stockfish that are taken and wild fish that are returned are vital to managing your stocking policy effectively. For one thing, it's the only way of getting an idea of whether changes in stocking density are reflected in angler catches. It's also a great idea to team up with neighbouring fishing clubs to come up with a coordinated stocking plan that's right for your river. Your club might even try to set up just a small number of sites that are stocked, perhaps for the benefit of less physically able members. In all cases, you should retain multiple non-stocked areas to help preserve the overall health of your river, including its wild fish populations. Do remember, there are examples of where reducing stocking density actually increases angler catches. You should give serious consideration as to whether your club could move over to fishing for wild fish on a catch and release basis. There are some fantastic experiences out there for anglers of all abilities.